Today I will be sharing how your fleet can use electronic logging devices to reduce risk and improve your fleet's operations. Before I get started, I'm going to provide a quick overview of the ELD mandate. From there, I will move into ELD mandate exceptions. I will then provide an update on the Canadian ELD mandate and give you some background information on a recent development. Both Texas and Florida will require their intrastate drivers to adopt electronic logging devices. I'll then move on to compliance deadlines before jumping into how you can use ELDs to reduce risk for your fleet. Afterwards, I'll go into how you can use ELDs to improve your fleet's operations before moving on to the reasons why you should consider transitioning your fleet to ELDs sooner than later. I'll then conclude with how you can use BigRoad to help your fleet get on the road to compliance. Before I get started though, there are a couple things I'd like to cover to help our webinar run smoothly. If you submitted questions prior to the webinar, I'll do my best to answer them during the presentation. If you have questions during the webinar, please feel free to enter them into the question box that's located on the GoToWebinar control panel. The question box is located on the bottom right. At the end of the presentation, I'll also open the floor for any extra questions, so don't worry if I don't get to them right away. Let's get started. First, let's cover what the ELD mandate is and why it's coming into effect. The ELD mandate is a regulation that requires the majority of commercial motor vehicle drivers in the United States to run an ELD in their vehicle to record their hours of service. The FMCSA is mandating electronic logging devices to make the road safer by preventing fatigue driving. They also mandated the devices to make it easier and faster to accurately track, manage, and share records of duty data. As mentioned, the mandate will affect a majority of fleets and drivers. Only drivers that qualify for an exemption will not have to run an ELD by the mandate deadline. I will cover those exemptions shortly. Please note that the final rule was published on December 16, 2015, giving fleets and drivers 2 years to make the transition. The mandate deadline is December 18, 2017, meaning fleets must transition to electronic logging devices by this time. That's just over 6 months away, which isn't a lot of time to research an ELD solution and implement one that best fits your fleet. Also, fleets using AOBRDS do qualify for a 2-year extension, which I'll also cover shortly. As a general rule of thumb, if you're currently required to keep a record of duty status, a paper log, or an electronic log, you will have to run an electronic logging device. However, drivers who do not currently keep their records of duty status are exempt. Similarly, short-haul drivers who stay within a 100 air-mile radius from their home office also qualify for an exemption. However, if a short-haul driver does run outside their 100 air-mile radius, they will need an electronic logging device for this time. Please note that if your fleet is a mix of long-haul and short-haul drivers, your long-haul drivers will need ELDs by December 18, 2017. There will be no exemptions for mixed driving. On to the next exemption. If you're a driver who drives less than 8 days during a 30-day period, you also qualify for an exemption. However, if you log more than 8 days during a given 30-day period, for example, you log 12 days in 30, then you will need an ELD to be compliant with the mandate. Moreover, if you're driving a vehicle with a model year dated before 2000, so 1999 or earlier based on the VIN, you will also be exempt from running an ELD. This is because the vehicle's diagnostic ability is not compatible with new technology, as it is too old. Lastly, if you're a driver who's part of a drive-away towaway operation and the commercial motor vehicle being driven is part of the shipment, so an empty vehicle for lease, sale, or repair, you will also qualify for an exemption. Please note though, if you have a trailer with empty vehicles on it for sale, like a normal shipment, you will not be exempt. It is only if the vehicle you're driving is empty and for sale. So what if you're exempt from running an ELD? Is there any reason why you'd still consider getting one? First, even if you're exempt, chances are you still need to keep your record of duty status, meaning your drivers still need to fill up their logs and record their hours of service. ELDs and AOBRDs can help your fleet save time and money by reducing the amount of paperwork and manual data entry your drivers and staff have to complete. Still not convinced? Listen to the rest of this webinar to learn more about how ELDs can optimize your fleet's operations. Plus, with the majority of fleets moving to electronic logging devices, DOT officers are going to be trained on inspecting electronic logs, which will make them the new standard. Paper logs will become less common. With the changes, it's also likely that inspectors are going to look at those paper logs a lot more closely, as they're more likely to have an error or a violation. If you think your fleet isn't ready for electronic logging devices yet, consider moving to an electronic logbook, like our BigRoad mobile app. It's free to use and it helps your drivers create clean, easy to read logs. It's a common question we receive here at BigRoad. What is happening with the Canadian ELD mandate? First, I'd like to mention that Canadian drivers, and Mexican drivers as well, who cross the border into the US and do not qualify for an exemption will have to run an electronic logging device. Now to the Canadian ELD mandate. The Canadian government is in the process of creating their own version of the ELD mandate. At the moment, they've written up their proposed ELD mandate and provided it to stakeholders and companies like BigRoad for review. However, with no formal timeline for implementation has been established, but it is going to happen. Although it's worth noting that the Canadian government has said that they will follow a similar implementation timeline as the United States. The Canadian government has also said previously that they would publish the final Canadian ELD mandate this spring. However, from the looks of it, it won't happen likely till this summer or fall. As trusted compliance experts, we'll do our best to keep you updated on the status of the Canadian ELD mandate through our BigRoad blog, our social media channels, and our monthly newsletter. Think you're exempt from running an ELD because you're an intrastate driver? Depending on which state you live in, that may change. In April, Texas changed its hours of service rules to require intrastate drivers to have to run ELDs by December 19, 2019. AOBRDS reported that only drivers that qualify for an exemption under the Texas mandate are agricultural drivers who drive within a 150 air mile radius of the product's point of origin / distribution during harvest season. However, it's worth noting that another publication, Infrastructure, notes that drivers part of a towaway operation, short-haul drivers, and drivers with vehicles older than 2,000 would still be exempt under the Texas mandate. It was also reported 2 weeks ago that Florida is now considering to mandate ELDs for their intrastate drivers as well. Their deadline is a year sooner than Texas. Florida will require their drivers to be ELD compliant by December 31st, 2018. Also, the only reported exemption for the Florida mandate will be drivers transporting placardable amounts of hazardous materials. It's likely that other states will also start mandating ELDs for their intrastate drivers. Just like the Canadian ELD mandate, we'll keep you informed of any new developments via social media, our blog, and our monthly newsletter. Pardon me. Now let's get back to the federal ELD mandate. First, the ELD mandate final rule was published on December 16, 2015 to give fleets and drivers 2 years to find an ELD or AOBRD solution. If you don't qualify for one of the previously mentioned exemptions and you're currently using paper logs or electronic logs, you must transition to ELDs by December 18, 2017. However, if you get an AOBRD before the mandate deadline, you can continue using it for an additional 2 years. AOBRDs give your fleet and drivers extra time to adjust to engine-connected logging, while giving them a little more flexibility with log editing. Don't know what an AOBRD is? No problem. I'll explain what it is and how it's similar yet different from an ELD later in the presentation. Also, please note that by December 17, 2019, all fleets and drivers, including those on AOBRDs, must transition to ELDs. Pardon. Now, with a good understanding of the ELD mandate and the exemptions, it's time to move on to the next section of the presentation, how you can use electronic logging devices to minimize risk in your fleet. The first risk that ELDs will help reduce is the risk to your safety score from violations and fines. Before I explain how electronic logging devices can help reduce the risk of violations to your safety score, I would like to give a quick refresher on what CSA is and how it works. First, CSA is an FMCSA initiative that is designed to improve road safety by putting more pressure on companies and motor carriers who pose a high safety risk on the road. The FMCSA uses their safety management system to assess safety scores by looking at motor carriers' basic scores. BASIC stands for Behavior Analysis, and Safety Improvement categories. They are divided into 7 categories. The first basic category is unsafe driving, which are things like not wearing your seatbelt or speeding. The next is crash indicator, which is based on your history of crashes. Then the hours of service compliance, which are things like logbook violations. The next is vehicle maintenance, which can be things like mechanical defects or not making necessary repairs. The next category after that is controlled substances, which would be impaired driving due to drugs or alcohol. The next basic category is hazardous materials compliance, which would be unsafe handling of hazardous materials. The last category is driver fitness, so that would be things like a driver who lacks training or experience. Based on the information from all the categories, the safety management system will group your fleet with other motor carriers with the same range of safety events by each basic, and then rank all motor carriers. From there, you'll be assigned a number from 0 to 100, with 100 being the worst, causing your fleet to be flagged in the system for more inspections. So now with an understanding of how safety scores work, let's cover how ELDs can help your fleet reduce the risk of violations and fines that can lower your safety score. First, electronic logging devices help your drivers avoid fines and violations by automatically recording their drive times to create their hours of service and logs. Pardon me. With paper logs, it's easy for a driver to accidentally mark the wrong line, causing a violation. As ELDs automatically record their drive times, it helps drivers avoid making common form and error mistakes that can hurt your fleet safety score and cost you money. ELDs also help your fleet prepare for audits. As logs are automatically created and stored electronically, they can also be stored in a centralized location. This will help your fleet be able to pull them up during an audit. With paper logs, it's easy to lose a page or to have an important document misfiled. Lastly, ELDs help your drivers create clean, easy-to-read logs that can help them get through inspections faster. If your driver's logs are messy and hard to read, the DOT inspector is likely to nitpick more during the inspection. Another risk that ELDs help lower is the risk of low driver acceptance of new technology. With the ELD mandate deadline fast approaching, drivers can use paper logs. Drivers using paper logs or e-logs will have to transition to electronic logging devices. This can be a big adjustment for drivers. As a result, new technology can seem intimidating and complicated to drivers who are not tech savvy. Pardon me. Drivers are likely concerned about their privacy. They may not have a good understanding of what an ELD is, how it works, and what it records. They may be concerned with that the device is always watching them. Consequently, there is a risk of lower driver morale if you do not transition your fleet in a way that engages your drivers and gives them an opportunity to share their feedback. Their input is important as they'll be the ones who have to use the devices. So how do you reduce the risk to your driver's morale? Consider implementing AOBRDs. An AOBRD, otherwise known as an automatic onboard recording device, is a piece of hardware that connects to a vehicle's engine to record a driver's hours of service. It functions in a similar manner to an ELD, except it records and displays less data. What does that mean exactly? I'll explain in a moment in the next slide. AOBRDs give fleets a little more flexibility in terms of what they can edit, giving fleets and drivers a little more leeway to correct mistakes as they learn how to use the devices. Excuse me. We recommend AOBRDs as they help transition drivers into engine-connected logging without moving them directly to the more restrictive ELD. Fleets that get AOBRDs before the mandate deadline qualify for the grandfather clause and can continue using the devices for an additional 2 years. This gives fleets the opportunity to run under the more flexible AOBRD rules for an extra 2 years as they train their drivers to learn how to create engine-connected logs. Also note that if you're not using AOBRDs by December 18, 2017, you will not be able to qualify for the grandfather clause and will not be able to purchase AOBRDs anymore. You will have to transition directly to ELDs. So what's the difference between an AOBRD or ELD? Well, as shown in the chart, AOBRDs record a lot less information. For example, AOBRDs only record locations during a change in duty status, and those locations can be entered manually. In contrast, an ELD automatically records locations whenever there's a change in duty status, every 60 minutes during an interval during driving, when the engine is turned on and off, when the driver signs in and out, and at the end and start of yard moves and personal conveyance. Another big difference between the two devices is how much editing can be done on a driver's log. AOBRDs allow for minor edits and do not readily display the edit history to inspectors. However, ELDs are far more restrictive when it comes to editing. Once a driver has submitted their log, they cannot make any edits to it. A fleet administrator can make minor edits to correct mistakes or add missing information. Once they've made the edit, they have to submit the edited log to the driver for them to verify. Please note that automatically recorded events cannot be changed, only annotated with an ELD. In addition, the ELD records who made the edit, when and why, with all edits being visible to DOT inspectors. Let's move on how you can use ELDs to maximize your fleet's operations. First, let's talk about how electronic logging devices can give your drivers more driving time. ELDs simplify the logging process by automatically recording a large portion of your driver's day. Not only does this take the guesswork out of estimating times, it makes it easier to complete tasks and record the locations, but it helps drivers get on the road quickly. Because of this automated data collection, the amount of paperwork that drivers have to complete is significantly reduced. With ELDs, they just have to verify the information that was recorded is correct instead of manually entering and completing their logs and drawing out the graphs. Which leads us to another way that ELDs save drivers time. With paper logs, a driver has to run to the nearest 15 minutes to draw out the graph, even if a task only took 8 minutes to complete. ELDs provide precise, accurate drive time, so if a task only took 6 minutes, it can be reflected on their log generated by the ELD, allowing them to use all of their drive time. Electronic logging devices can also help save your back office staff time as well. First, ELDs automatically record driver logs and store them in a central location. Back office staff no longer have to chase drivers down for their logs. This improves communication within the fleet as they're able to instantly access the necessary information. In addition, depending on the ELD solution your fleet chooses, your back office staff may be able to see where your drivers are on their route, allowing dispatchers a chance to either reroute drivers, provide traffic conditions, or get an ETA for a client. With BigRoad, back office staff are able to see where drivers are and how much driving time they have left, giving office staff a chance to optimize their drivers' time and routes. Lastly, automated data collection saves your back office staff from manual data entry, which helps save your time, your fleet valuable man hours that can be redirected to other areas of the business. Which brings us to our next point, how you can use electronic logging devices to maximize your fleet's operations. The first way that ELDs can help maximize operations is reducing the amount of man hours spent on paperwork and administrative tasks. As previously mentioned, ELDs save both your drivers and back office staff time from filling out paperwork and completing manual data entry. Another way ELDs will help is to reduce the amount of fines and violations through automatic log auditing. ELD solutions like BigRoad's DashLink ELD and the BigRoad web app help fleets save time and money by notifying fleets of violations as they occur, giving drivers a chance to fix the error before it's caught in a roadside inspection. ELDs also create clean, inspection-ready driver logs that are easy for law enforcement to go through. As mentioned earlier in the presentation, electronic logging devices also help fleets prepare for audits by automatically storing logs in a central location where they can be easily retrieved. Depending on the ELD solution you choose for your fleet, ELDs will also help you make better decisions with improved reporting, giving you valuable insight into your fleet's operations. Lastly, all the previously mentioned benefits of ELDs will help your fleet reduce costs and save valuable time, which will help protect your fleet's margins and improve your bottom line. Not quite convinced why your fleet should consider transitioning to ELDs? No problem. I'll explain why it's better for your fleet to transition sooner than later. First, you need to give yourself time to research ELD solutions and providers. You'll want to know how long they've been in the regulatory compliance space and how well they understand the trucking industry and hours of service compliance. You also want to take time to learn more about their solution and to find out if you can trial or demo the product to see if it's the right fit for your fleet. You'll then need to give your office staff and drivers time to learn the new technology and process. You don't want to choose any solution just because you ran out of time and need something to be compliant by the mandate deadline. Not only will you have a solution that doesn't fit your fleet, but you'll frustrate your back office staff and drivers. Instead, give them time to use the device and the new process before the mandate deadline to give them a chance to get comfortable with engine-connected logging. Additionally, as mentioned earlier in the presentation, we highly recommend fleets move to AOBRDS before moving on to ELDs to give your staff and drivers added flexibility and time to get used to the technology. Be sure to get them before the mandate deadline to qualify for the grandfather clause. Lastly, with the mandate deadline over 6 months away, it may seem like you still have a lot of time to research and choose a solution. However, it's risky to wait until the last minute as there will be a high demand for ELDs, pardon me, and some providers may not be able to fulfill their order on time. Be prepared for the mandate. If your fleet is not using an AOBRD or ELD by the mandate deadline, you will no longer be operating in compliance, putting your safety score at risk. Do you have questions about ELDs and how they can help improve your fleet's operations? We can help. BigRoad is an industry leader providing hours of service compliance solutions. We were founded in 2011 with the goal of helping drivers track their record of duty status while helping them ensure they were running in compliance with complicated and constantly changing hours of service rules. From there, we quickly grew into a fleet-friendly business that offers solutions to support back-office staff, dispatchers, and safety managers to better manage their drivers and safety, and ultimately improve their business operations. And now with the ELD mandate fast approaching, we're helping fleets get on the road to compliance with a solution that's easy to use, fast to roll out, and affordable. Our solutions are the BigRoad mobile app, BigRoad web app, and our DashLink ELD. Discover an ELD solution that's both fleet-friendly and driver-friendly. Ask your drivers to download our mobile app. It's our electronic logbook and hours of service management application. We'll give your drivers a chance to try our app and get a feel for e-logs. The BigRoad mobile app is completely free for drivers to use. To get it, download the app to an Apple or Android device. The BigRoad mobile app takes the guesswork out of logging for your drivers. They can easily create inspectable, error-free logs while accurately tracking their hours of service. Plus, your drivers don't have to worry about wrong calculations, driving over their hours, state-specific rules, or form or manner errors, as our app will proactively notify them of any issue. Are your drivers already using the mobile app? Then we suggest try our BigRoad web app. It's our fleet management tool that helps fleet managers and office staff better manage their drivers. With the BigRoad web app, you will be able to see where all your drivers are in a map and monitor their hours of service compliance. You can easily see who's at risk of a violation and reach out to them to correct it before it's caught in a roadside inspection. Looking for an ELD solution your drivers will want to use? Be sure to check out our DashLink ELD. It's our solution to help fleets run in compliance with the ELD mandate. Pardon me. And it's already a favorite among drivers and fleets. In fact, a customer recently told us how their drivers were initially apprehensive about using ELDs, but our DashLink won them over. They loved how easy it was to use, how it reduced the amount of paperwork they had to complete, and how they could see their drive times at a glance. DashLink is a flexible solution that lets you decide when you want to run in full ELD compliance, meaning if you implement it before the deadline, you'll have a full 2 years to run under the more flexible AOBRD rules. You decide when your fleet transitions with a simple software download to ELDs. This makes DashLink a great option for fleets with drivers who are apprehensive about the mandate or just less tech savvy. Pardon me. That concludes the presentation part of our webinar. If you have any questions about the information we just covered or about BigRoad, please type them into the question box now. While we're waiting for questions to come in, I have a few things you can take advantage of. If you're interested in learning more about BigRoad solutions and would like a personalized demo for your fleet, send us an email at sales@bigroad.com and we'd be happy to set that up for you. If you haven't done so already, get started with a free 30-day no-obligation trial of BigRoad. Getting into the system and playing around with the features and functionality is the best way to decide if BigRoad is the right fit for you. To do this, visit https://app.bigroad.com/sign-up/create-account. We also suggest that your drivers download the BigRoad mobile app. They can visit the Google Play Store or iTunes Store and search for BigRoad to download it to their Apple or Android device. Lastly, once we've wrapped up questions, you'll be prompted to complete a survey. If you could take a second to fill this out, we'd appreciate it. It lets us know how we did and how we can make our webinars better in the future. Now let's dive into questions. Scott asks, what's the difference between an ELD or an AOBRD? Is an AOBRD still compliant with the ELD mandate? Electronic onboard recording devices are similar to ELDs in that they connect to a vehicle's engine to record data that is used by the device to create a driver's logs. The real difference between the two is that AOBRDs record and will display a lot less data. For example, an ELD will record your location at several different points, from login to engine start to every 60 minutes while driving. In contrast, an AOBRD only records your location during duty status changes. In addition, AOBRDs offer a little more flexibility when it comes to editing driver logs. Edits with ELDs are very limited with every change recorded. As a result, AOBRDs are a great option for fleets looking to ease their drivers into engine-connected logging. Lastly, AOBRDs are compliant with the mandate. If your fleet gets them before December 18, 2017, you can continue using them for an additional 2 years. Please note that you cannot buy an AOBRD after this date, even if you want to. James asks, with the BigRoad system, do I have a choice with going with an AOBRD or ELD? Our DashLink ELD can operate as an AOBRD. If you implement it before the mandate deadline, you will qualify for the grandfather clause, allowing your fleet to continue using it until December 17, 2019. If you get DashLink before the mandate deadline, you do get to choose when to switch over to ELDs during that 2-year extension period. Our device is easily upgraded to an ELD with a simple software download. If you do not get DashLink, though, before the mandate deadline, you will only have the option of using it as an ELD. Hunter asks, are you certified with the FMCSA? BigRoad has submitted all the documentation to the FMCSA to self-certify our DashLink. They're currently reviewing it, and we should be on the list any day now. Pardon me. Dale asks, what is the cost per user? The cost is $15 per license and $10 per DashLink. For single user truck, that works out to about $25 per month. That looks like that's all the questions we have time for. The remaining questions will be answered on the BigRoad blog. Thank you for attending today's webinar.